The wind screamed across the Arctic ice like a wounded animal. Snow fell so thick that Park could not see his own hand when he held it in front of his face. The temperature had dropped to 40 degrees below zero, and even inside his heated suit, he could feel the cold trying to crawl into his bones. He was supposed to be sleeping. His shift at Research Station Polaris had ended 3 hours ago, and Captain Myra had ordered everyone to stay inside until the blizzard passed, but had seen something through the window of the medical bay, a streak of fire cutting through the white sky, a flash of light somewhere on the ice field to the north. Something had fallen from the sky. Was 28 years old. He had joined the military because he wanted to help people, and they had made him a field medic. He had trained for 5 years. He had served in 3 conflict zones. He had saved 17 lives and lost 4. He knew the weight of both. He also knew that whoever was in that crashed vessel would die if he waited for permission. So he did not wait. The walk through the blizzard took almost an hour. Followed the direction he had seen the fire fall, trusting his compass when his eyes became useless. Twice he fell into snow drifts that reached his chest. Once he walked in a circle for 10 minutes before realizing his mistake. The cold was a living thing, pressing against him, trying to stop him. But did not stop. He found the wreckage half buried in a crater of melted ice that had already begun to freeze again. The vessel was small, perhaps meant for 4 or 5 passengers. It was shaped like a teardrop, with a hull of some dark metal that reflected no light. Smoke rose from cracks in its surface, and strange symbols glowed and flickered along its sides. This was not a human ship. Had heard about the aliens, of course. Everyone on Earth had. 3 years ago, the Galactic Assembly had made first contact. 12 species from 12 star systems, united in a coalition older than human civilization. They had observed Earth for centuries, waiting for humanity to develop space travel. Now they were watching to see if humans deserved a place among them. So far, they were not impressed. Approached the wreckage carefully. He found an opening where the hull had torn, and he squeezed through into darkness. His suit lights activated, cutting through the smoke. The interior was a mess of broken equipment and strange fluids. He saw 3 bodies, none of them human. They were tall and thin, with silver skin that caught the light. Their eyes were closed and they did not move. Checked each one. No pulse, no breath, dead. Then he heard a sound, soft, weak, like a whisper. He followed it to the back of the vessel, where a 4th figure lay trapped beneath a fallen beam. This one was alive, barely. She was female, or at least assumed so from her features. Her silver skin was darker than the others, and patterns of light moved slowly beneath its surface, like veins of electricity. But the lights were dim, flickering, fading. Her chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths. A wound on her side leaked fluid that was not quite blood, pooling beneath her in a spreading stain. Knelt beside her. He did not know alien medicine. He did not know her species. He did not know if anything he did would help or hurt. But he knew she was dying. He lifted the beam off her with strength he did not know he had. He pulled emergency supplies from his pack. He applied pressure to the wound with bandages designed for human flesh. He spoke to her in soft, calm tones, even though he knew she could not understand him. Her eyes opened. They were deep gold like sunset reflected in honey. She looked at him and her lips moved. No sound came out. Radio crackled. Captain Myra's voice cut through the static. "Lieutenant Park, report. We have detected your beacon moving north. You were ordered to remain on station." Press the radio button. "I found a crashed vessel. Alien. 3 dead, 1 survivor. She needs immediate medical attention." There was a pause. Then Myra's voice came back, sharp and cold. "Do not engage. Do not touch anything. Assembly authorities have been contacted. They will send a recovery team. Your orders are to wait at a safe distance." Looked at the alien woman. Her lights were fading faster now. Her golden eyes were losing focus. "With respect, Captain," he said, "she will be dead before any recovery team arrives." "That is not your concern, Lieutenant. Humanity cannot afford a diplomatic incident. If she dies, it must not be because a human interfered. Do you understand?" Understood. He understood politics and fear and the careful calculation of acceptable losses. He understood that his career, maybe his freedom, hung on the next words he spoke. He also understood that none of that mattered when someone was dying in front of him. "I understand, Captain," he said. Then he turned off his radio. He worked through the night. He used everything he had learned, adapting human techniques to an alien body. He cleaned the wound and sealed it with medical foam. He tried to stabilize her temperature, wrapping her in thermal blankets, but nothing seemed to work. Her vital signs, whatever they were, kept dropping. Then he remembered something from his training, something about compatible blood types across certain species. A rumor, really, untested, possibly dangerous. He looked at his arm. He looked at her fading lights. He made a choice. Using a field kit, drew his own blood and prepared a direct transfusion. He found a vein in her arm that looked similar enough to human anatomy. He connected the tube. And he gave her his blood. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the lights beneath her skin flared bright, so bright that had to shield his eyes. Her body arched and she gasped, drawing a deep breath. Her wound stopped leaking. Her eyes found his again, clear and aware. She reached out and touched his arm with cold fingers. Where she touched him, his skin burned. Not with pain, but with something else. Something that felt like connection. Then the world went dark. Woke 3 days later in the medical bay at Research Station Polaris. Captain Myra stood at his bedside, her face unreadable. "The alien is gone," she said. "Diplomats arrived in the night. They took her without speaking to anyone. No thank you, no acknowledgement." Tried to sit up. His body felt weak, hollowed out from blood loss. "She was alive?" he asked. "She was alive." Myra paused. "You saved her life, Lieutenant, and you disobeyed a direct order in doing so. You understand what that means." Nodded, he understood. Myra looked at him for a long moment. Then, for just a second, something softened in her expression. "Command has decided to bury this incident. The aliens have not complained, so there will be no diplomatic consequences. You will receive a formal reprimand in your file, nothing more." She turned to leave, then stopped at the door. "For what it is worth, I would have done the same thing, but never tell anyone I said that." She left. Lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling. He lifted his arm and looked at where the alien woman had touched him. A mark remained on his skin. It was shaped like a spiral, and it glowed faintly in the dim light of the medical bay. He did not know what it meant. He did not know if he would ever see her again. He did not know if what he had done mattered to anyone but himself. But he knew he had made a choice, and he could live with it. Outside, the blizzard had finally stopped. The Arctic sky was clear and cold and full of stars. Somewhere out there, among those stars, a silver-skinned woman with lights beneath her skin was breathing, because a human had refused to let her die. That was enough. For now, that was enough. 32 years is a long time, long enough to forget, long enough to be forgotten. Park was 60 years old now. His hair had turned, and his hands were not as steady as they once were. He walked with a slight limp from an old injury that had never healed properly. He lived alone in a small house on the coast of Korea, in a fishing village called that most people had never heard of. He ran a clinic there. Nothing fancy. Just a small building with 2 examination rooms, some basic equipment, and a shelf full of medicines. The fishermen came to him when they cut themselves on hooks or burned themselves on engine parts. Their wives came when their children had fevers. The old people came when their bones ached and they needed someone to listen. Was good at listening. He had learned over the years that sometimes listening was the best medicine he could offer. He thought about the alien woman sometimes. less often than he used to. The memory had faded like an old photograph left in the sun. He remembered the blizzard, the crash, the golden eyes. He remembered the burning feeling when she touched his arm, but it all felt like something that had happened to someone else in another life. The mark on his arm still glowed at night. He had never told anyone about it. He wore long sleeves, even in summer. When patients asked about the strange light they sometimes saw through the fabric, he changed the subject. He had tried to research what the mark meant. In the early years, he had searched through every database he could access, looking for information about the species. He learned that they were healers, famous throughout the galaxy for their medical knowledge. He learned that they were strict pacifists who had not fought a war in 10,000 years. He learned that they lived for centuries and valued knowledge above all things. But he never learned what the mark meant, and eventually he stopped looking. Life-in was quiet, woke early before the sun. He drank tea on his porch and watched the fishing boats head out to sea. He opened his clinic at 8 and closed it at 6. He ate simple meals and read old books and went to bed early. He had no wife, no children. He had dated a few women over the years, but nothing had lasted. There was always something missing, something he could not name. A feeling that part of him was somewhere else, waiting for something that might never come. He told himself he was happy. Most days he believed it. The world had changed while grew old. Humanity had been admitted to the Galactic Assembly 15 years ago, after decades of observation and debate, but they held the lowest status of any member species. Humans were allowed to trade and travel, but they had no vote, no voice, no power. The other species did not trust them. They looked at human history and saw war after war, atrocity after atrocity. They looked at Earth and saw a planet that humans had nearly destroyed through pollution and greed. They called humans violent, unstable, dangerous. Did not follow galactic politics. He did not own a communication screen or subscribe to news feeds. He learned about the outside world through his patients, who sometimes mentioned things they had heard. He learned that tensions were rising in the assembly, that 3 species were threatening to leave, that there was talk of war for the first time in 1,000 years. He listened, nodded, and went back to treating burns and broken bones. Then one autumn evening, Han came to visit. Was oldest friend. They had served together at Station Polaris, back when they were young and the world was simpler. Had gone on to become an intelligence officer, rising through the ranks until he knew secrets that most people never dreamed of. He had retired 5 years ago, but suspected he still had connections. Arrived at sunset, carrying a bottle of expensive whiskey and wearing a troubled expression. They sat on his porch and watched the sky turn orange and purple over the sea. "You look old," said. "So do you," replied. They laughed, and for a moment it was like no time had passed at all. But then his expression grew serious. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small device, which he placed on the table between them. A holographic display flickered to life, showing images and text that could not quite follow. "I need to tell you something," said, "and you are not going to believe me." Poured himself a drink. "Try me." Told him about the crisis in the Galactic Assembly. 3 species, the Dominion, the Morrow Collective, and the Empire, were preparing for war. They had formed an alliance and were demanding changes to the Assembly's structure. If their demands were not met, they would withdraw and begin conquering smaller species. The Assembly was fracturing. Diplomats from a dozen worlds were working desperately to find a solution, and at the center of it all, trying to hold everything together, was a single person. Her name was. She was the High Arbiter, the supreme mediator of the Galactic Assembly. It was the highest position any individual could hold, and no had occupied it in 1,000 years. Felt his heart stop. He said, "The woman I saved." "Yes," nodded. "She was not just any healer, she was the daughter of the matriarch, hidden among common healers to protect her from those who wanted her dead. The pirates who attacked her ship were assassins hired by a rival faction. Stared at the holographic image. It showed a tall, silver-skinned woman standing before a vast assembly of alien beings. Her markings glowed bright, and her golden eyes were calm and strong. She looked like a queen. By saving her, continued, you changed the course of galactic history. She rose to power because she survived, and she survived because of you. Shook his head. I just did what anyone would do. I found someone who was hurt and I helped them. That is exactly the point. Leaned forward. She has been looking for you. For 3 years she has been asking about you, sending messages through diplomatic channels, requesting information about the human who saved her life 32 years ago. Why? I do not know, but I have a message from her. Touched the device and a new image appeared. It was a written message, translated into Korean but clearly from an alien hand. It read, I remember, I have always remembered, come to me. There is work to do. Read the message 3 times. His hands were shaking. The mark on his arm was glowing brighter than it had in years. This does not make sense, he said. I am nobody. I am a village doctor. I have nothing to offer the leader of the galaxy. Smiled, but there was sadness in his eyes. That is where you are wrong, old friend. You are exactly what she needs, not a politician, not a diplomat, just a man who once walked into a blizzard because someone needed help. He paused. The question is, will you do it again? Looked out at the sea. The last light of day was fading and the stars were beginning to appear. Somewhere out there, among those countless points of light, the woman whose life he had saved was waiting. He had spent 32 years forgetting, living a quiet life, telling himself that what he had done did not matter. But the mark on his arm was burning now, warm and insistent, like a heartbeat that was not his own. Maybe it was time to remember. Maybe it was time to find out what his choice had truly meant. Finished his drink and stood up. His body ached and he felt every one of his 60 years, but something else was stirring in his chest, something that felt like purpose. When do we leave? He asked. Smiled. Tomorrow, he said, the galaxy is waiting. The journey to the assembly capital took 7 days. Spent most of that time staring out the window of the transport ship, watching stars stream past like rain on glass. He had never left Earth before. He had never even left Korea in the last 20 years. Now he was crossing distances that his mind could not properly understand. Light years, parsecs, words that had once meant nothing to him, suddenly made real. The transport was a human vessel, but it was small and old compared to the alien ships they passed. Saw cruisers the size of mountains, their hulls decorated with lights and symbols from a dozen cultures. He saw living ships that seemed to breathe and pulse. He saw things he had no words for, shapes that did not make sense to human eyes. He felt small, he felt old, he felt completely out of place. But the mark on his arm kept glowing, warm and steady, and somehow that gave him courage. The assembly capital was called Nexus Station. It was not a planet but a constructed habitat, a sphere the size of a small moon that orbited a dying red star. Millions of beings from hundreds of species lived and worked there, conducting the business of galactic civilization. When stepped off the transport, he was immediately overwhelmed. The air smelled strange, a mixture of scents he could not identify. The sounds were a chaos of alien languages, mechanical hums, and music that made his teeth ache. The crowds pushed past him, beings of every shape and size, most of them ignoring him completely. He was met by a human diplomat named, a young woman with a tired face and efficient manner. She explained that he would be given quarters in the human section of the station, and that the High Arbiter would summon him when she was ready. When will that be? Asked. I do not know, replied. She is very busy. The crisis is getting worse every day. You may have to wait. Nodded. He was good at waiting. His quarters were small but comfortable. A bed, a desk, a window that looked out on the red star and the ships that moved around it. He spent 3 days there, eating meals that were delivered to his door and watching the activity of the station through his window. On the fourth day, the summons came. A attendant appeared at his door, tall and silver-skinned but without the glowing markings. The attendant bowed and spoke in perfect Korean, explaining that the High Arbiter would see him now. Followed the attendant through corridors that seemed to go on forever. They passed through gardens of alien plants, through galleries filled with art from 1,000 worlds, through chambers where important-looking beings argued in languages he did not understand. Everyone they passed stopped to watch them go, and felt their eyes on his back like weights. Finally, they reached a door that was twice as tall as any human would need. The attendant pressed a panel, and the door slid open. The chamber beyond was vast and circular, with walls of some dark material that seemed to absorb light. In the center stood a single figure, her back turned, looking out a massive window at the dying star. She turned as entered, and his breath caught in his throat. She had changed. She was taller now, and her silver skin was marked with ceremonial scars that traced patterns across her face and arms. Her bioluminescent markings were brighter than he remembered, pulsing with colors he could not name. She wore robes of deep blue that moved like water when she walked. But her eyes were the same, golden like sunset reflected in honey, and when they found his face, something in them shifted, something that looked like relief or joy or both. "You came," she said. Her voice was deeper than before, layered with harmonics that seemed to resonate in his chest. "You asked," he replied. His voice sounded thin and weak in comparison. She crossed the distance between them in 3 long strides. She stopped close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. Up close, he could see that the ceremonial scars were actually beautiful, each one a story written in flesh. 32 years, she said. I have thought of you every day. I have searched for you for 3 of those years. I was beginning to fear you had died. Managed a small smile. I am harder to kill than I look. Yes, her eyes moved to his arm. You still carry my mark. He pushed up his sleeve, revealing the spiral that glowed against his skin. In her presence, it burned brighter than ever, almost painful in its intensity. I never knew what it meant, he said. Reached out and touched the mark with her fingers. Where she touched, the glow flared and felt a shock run through his entire body. Not pain, but something else. Recognition, connection, a feeling like coming home after a long journey. When I was dying, she said, and you gave me your blood, you gave me more than life. You gave me something of yourself, your strength, your stubbornness, your refusal to let a stranger die. She paused. It changed me, made me different from others, stronger in some ways, and it created a bond between us that cannot be broken. Stared at her. I do not understand. You would not. It is a thing, and we do not speak of it to outsiders, but I will speak of it to you because you deserve to know. She released his arm and stepped back. The mark means you are part of me, and I am part of you. What you feel, I feel. What you dream, I sometimes dream. When you were happy, I knew. When you were lonely, I knew that too. Thought about his quiet life his empty house, his long nights staring at the sea. I am sorry, he said. That must have been boring. Laughed, a sound like silver bells. It was not boring, it was peaceful. You do not know how rare peace is in my life. Your contentment was a gift. She moved to the window and gestured for him to join her. Together, they looked out at the dying star and the ships that circled it. But now there is no peace, she said. The assembly is breaking. War is coming. Billions will die if I cannot stop it. What can I do? Asked. I am just a doctor, an old man from a small village. I have no power here. You are wrong. Turned to face him. You have something that no one else has. You have lived proof of what humans can be. Not the violence and destruction that others see. Not the wars and atrocities in your history, but the compassion, the courage, the willingness to help even when it costs you everything. She placed her hand on his chest, over his heart. The war faction wants humanity expelled from the assembly. They say humans are too dangerous, too unstable, too violent to be trusted. They will use this as an excuse to start their war because humans are the weakest target. Her eyes held his. But if they could see what I saw 32 years ago in that blizzard, they might change their minds. They might see that humanity is worth saving. Felt the weight of what she was asking. She did not want him to fight. She did not want him to negotiate or scheme or play political games. She wanted him to be himself, to show the galaxy what one human had done and what it meant. "I do not know if I can do what you are asking," he said. "You already did," she replied. "You just need to tell them the story." She stepped back and smiled, and for a moment she was not the high arbiter of the Galactic Assembly. She was just the wounded stranger he had carried through a blizzard so many years ago. "I have waited 32 years for this," she said. "I can wait a little longer while you decide. But know this, whatever you choose, I will not forget what you did. The galaxy may never know your name, but I will carry it with me until the stars themselves grow cold." Looked at her. He looked at the dying star beyond the window. He thought about his clinic inn, his patients, his quiet life. And he thought about a night in a blizzard, when he had made a choice that changed everything. Maybe it was time to make another one. "Tell me what I need to do," he said. Smarkings flared bright with joy. "Come with me," she said. "We have much to prepare." The grand chamber of the assembly was the largest enclosed space had ever seen. It was shaped like a bowl, with thousands of seats rising in circles toward a ceiling so high that clouds formed near the top. Representatives from 12 species filled those seats, their forms and faces as varied as the stars themselves. Stood at the center of the chamber on a platform that floated in empty air. He felt naked. He felt terrified. He felt like the smallest thing in the universe. The war faction had called this session. Their leader, an ambassador named, stood on a platform opposite. There were beings, with hard shells and multiple eyes that reflected light like broken glass. Was large for his species, and his voice carried through the chamber like the grinding of stones. "We are here to decide the fate of the human species," announced. "For 20 years, we have tolerated their presence in this assembly. For 20 years, we have watched them spread through our territory like a disease. And for 20 years, we have seen nothing to suggest they deserve a place among civilized beings." He gestured, and holographic images appeared in the air around the chamber. Wars, nuclear explosions, burning cities, mass graves, the worst moments of human history displayed for all to see. "This is what they are," continued. "Violent, destructive, incapable of peace. They nearly destroyed their own world before they even reached space. They have fought more wars in their short history than most species fight in a million years. They are animals, and they must be contained before they poison the galaxy as they poisoned their planet." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Could see representatives nodding, their alien faces full of disgust and fear. Pointed at with one of his 4 arms. "And this is their champion, an old man, a retired soldier. This is the best humanity can offer." He made a sound that might have been laughter. "Let him speak. Let him try to defend the indefensible. Let everyone see the truth." The chamber fell silent. Every eye, every sensor, every form of attention turned to. He thought about running. He thought about hiding. He thought about the quiet beach inn and the simple life he had left behind. Then he thought about's face when she had asked for his help, and he thought about the mark on his arm, burning bright beneath his sleeve. He had never been good at speeches. He had never been good at politics or persuasion or playing games with words, but he knew how to tell the truth, and that would have to be enough. "I am not a hero," he began. His voice was quiet, but the chamber's systems amplified it so everyone could hear. "I am not a diplomat or a leader or anyone important. I am a doctor from a small village. I treat fishermen when they hurt themselves. I treat children when they have fevers. That is all I have done with my life for the last 30 years." He paused, gathering his thoughts. 32 years ago, I was a soldier stationed in the Arctic. One night I saw a ship fall from the sky, a ship carrying healers who were traveling somewhere important. Pirates had attacked them. Everyone on board was dead or dying. He looked up at the vast assembly of alien faces. I was ordered to stay back, to wait for proper authorities. My commanders were afraid of what might happen if a human interfered with alien business. They did not want any trouble. He shook his head. But there was a woman dying in that ship. I could hear her breathing through the wreckage. I could feel her life slipping away. And I knew that if I waited, if I followed orders, if I did the safe and sensible thing, she would be dead before anyone else arrived. He rolled up his sleeve, revealing the mark on his arm. It glowed bright in the dim chamber, and a ripple of surprise moved through the watching crowd. So I went into that wreckage. I pulled her out. I gave her my own blood to keep her alive because it was the only thing I had that might help. And then I collapsed because I had given too much. He let his sleeve fall back down. I did not know who she was. I did not know she was the daughter of the matriarch. I did not know that saving her would change the course of galactic history. I did not do it for reward or recognition or glory. I did it because she was hurt and I could help. That is all. That is the only reason. His multiple eyes gleamed with contempt. A single act of kindness does not erase thousands of years of violence. One human who did something decent does not make your entire species worthy of trust. No, agreed. It does not. You are right about that. Seemed surprised by the admission. Humans have done terrible things, continued. We have killed each other. We have destroyed our planet. We have committed atrocities that I cannot explain or excuse. All of that is true. He turned slowly, looking at the representatives from all 12 species. But that is not all we are, not all of us, not all the time. He paused. The reason I saved that woman was not because I was special. It was because that is what humans do. We help each other. We help strangers, not always, not all of us, but enough of us often enough that it matters. He thought about his life, his patience, the fishermen who thanked him with fresh fish because they could not afford to pay, the old women who brought him tea because they knew he lived alone, the children who ran to his clinic with scraped knees and trusted him to make the pain go away. I have spent my whole life watching humans, and I have seen the violence and the cruelty and the fear that you showed in those images, but I have also seen the other thing, the kindness, the courage, the stubborn, foolish belief that we can be better than we are. He looked at who sat in a place of honor high above the chamber floor. Her face was calm, but her markings were pulsing with emotion. The woman I saved has become the leader of this assembly. She has worked her entire life to prevent war, to heal divisions, to bring peace to a galaxy that too often chooses violence. And she tells me that something of what I am, what humans are, helped her become who she is today. He spread his hands. I cannot speak for all of humanity. I cannot promise you that we will never do terrible things again. But I can tell you this, we are trying. Every day, in a million small ways, humans are trying to be better, to help each other, to build something that lasts. He looked at, you call us animals. Maybe you are right, but animals can learn, animals can grow, and animals can surprise you if you give them the chance. The chamber was silent. Then from somewhere high in the seats, a voice spoke. It was a member of a species did not recognize, tall and willowy with skin like polished wood. I met a human once, the speaker said, 15 years ago on a trading station at the edge of known space. My ship had failed and I was stranded, unable to pay for repairs. A human engineer worked for 3 days without sleep, without payment to fix my vessel. When I asked why, she said, because you needed help. That was all. Another voice spoke from a different part of the chamber, then another, then another. One by one, representatives from different species shared their stories. Small acts of human kindness, unexpected moments of courage, times when humans had chosen to help, even when it cost them, even when it made no sense. The stories were not enough to erase thousands of years of history, but they were enough to create doubt, enough to make the chamber wonder if maybe, just maybe, the war faction was wrong. When the vote was called, it was closer than anyone expected. But the war faction lost. Humanity would remain in the assembly. The crisis would not end today, but the excuse for war had been taken away. The fracture had been delayed. Stood on his floating platform, surrounded by thousands of alien eyes, and felt something he had not felt in 32 years. He felt like he mattered. And high above him smiled, her markings blazing with light, and he knew that whatever happened next, he had done what he came to do. He had told the truth. And the truth had been enough. The days after the vote were a blur of activity. Diplomats from every species wanted to meet. News feeds across the galaxy carried his image and his words. The human who had saved the High Arbiter, the village doctor who had spoken before the assembly. He hated all of it. The attention made him uncomfortable. The questions made him tired. He had said what needed to be said, and now all he wanted was to go home, to return to his clinic, to the quiet life he understood. But before he could leave, summoned him one final time. They met in her private quarters, far from the chaos of politics and the eyes of the galaxy. The room was simple by standards, which meant it was still grander than anything had ever seen on Earth. Walls of living crystal that shifted colors with smooth, furniture that seemed to grow from the floor, a window that looked out on the dying star, its red light casting long shadows across the space. Stood by the window, her back to him, her markings pooling slowly with colors that now recognized as sadness mixed with hope. "You want to go home," she said without turning around. "Yes," he admitted. "I am not made for this. The politics, the attention, the noise. I am just an old man who got lucky once. I do not belong here." Turned to face him. In the red light of the dying star, she looked ancient and young at the same time, powerful and vulnerable. A leader of worlds who was also, somehow, still the wounded stranger he had carried through a blizzard. "Before you decide," she said, "there is something I need to tell you, something about the mark." She moved closer and felt the warmth radiating from her skin. She reached out and took his hand, turning his arm so the spiral was visible between them. "I told you before that this mark means we are connected, that what you feel, I feel, but I did not tell you everything." She paused, and her markings flickered with something that looked like nervousness. "Among my people, this bond has a name. We call it the joining. It is the deepest connection two beings can share. It is usually reserved for those who love each other across lifetimes." Stared at her. "Are you saying?" "I am saying that when I was dying and you saved me, something happened that should not be possible. The joining is meant to be deliberate, chosen. Two must agree to share their souls, and the process takes years of preparation." She shook her head slowly. "But you did it by accident. In a single moment of selfless action, you bound yourself to me in a way that my people consider sacred." "I did not mean to," said. "I did not know." "I know." She squeezed his hand. "And for 32 years I have wondered what to do about it. I could have severed the bond. There are ways, though they are painful, but I chose not to. Because when I felt what you felt, when I dreamed what you dreamed, I learned something that changed me." She looked at him with her golden eyes and saw something in them that he had not expected. Gratitude, yes. Respect, certainly. But also something deeper. Something that looked almost like love. "I learned what it means to be human," she said. "Not the violence and the fear, not the things that make my people distrust your kind, but the other things, the quiet kindness, the stubborn hope, the way you helped your patients even when they could not pay, the way you watched the sea and found peace in small moments." She released his hand and stepped back. You taught me that sentient beings do not have to be perfect to be good. You taught me that sometimes the most powerful thing someone can do is simply refuse to let a stranger die. And you taught me that connection between beings is possible even when everything separates them. Was quiet for a long moment. He thought about his life, his loneliness, the feeling that had always haunted him, the sense that part of him was missing. I felt it too, he said finally. The connection. I did not understand what it was, but I felt it. Every night when the mark glowed, I felt like something was reaching across the stars looking for me. Nodded, it was me. They stood in silence, two beings from different worlds, separated by biology and culture and the vast distances of space. And yet, somehow, connected in a way that neither of them had chosen but both of them had come to cherish. What happens now? Asked. That is your choice. Moved to a desk and picked up a small device which she handed to him. I have prepared two options for you. The first is a transport home. It leaves tomorrow morning. You can return to your clinic, to your peaceful life. The bond will remain, but the distance will dull it. You will feel me less often, and eventually, perhaps, you will forget. She paused. The second option is different. I want you to stay, not as a politician or a diplomat. I know you hate those things, but as an ambassador of a different kind. Someone who can show the galaxy what humans really are. Someone who can build bridges between our peoples simply by being who you have always been. Looked at the device in his hand. You want me to give up my home, my clinic, everything I know? Yes, did not look away. I am asking you to give up everything, and in return I am offering you something that I have never offered anyone else, a place at my side, a chance to help shape the future of the galaxy, and the truth of what lies between us, spoken openly, without shame. She took a breath. I am asking you to stay with me, for whatever time you have left. 20 years, perhaps, if the doctors on this station can help you live longer than normal human. 20 years when I will live for centuries. Tears appeared in her eyes, the first time I'd ever seen her cry. It is selfish of me to ask, I know that. But I have spent 32 years carrying you in my heart, and I am not ready to let you go. Not yet. Not while there is still time. Thought about the fishing boats at dawn, the smell of salt air, the old patients who counted on him. Then he thought about the assembly, the dying star, the woman standing before him who had been part of him for longer than he had known. He thought about a night 32 years ago, when he had walked into a blizzard because someone needed help. He had never been very good at following orders, and he had never been very good at doing the safe, sensible thing. I never had any children, he said slowly. I never built anything that would last beyond my own small life. I always thought that was a kind of failure. He looked up at her. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe the thing that lasts is not a building or a family or a monument. Maybe it is the way we change each other, the marks we leave on souls that will outlive us. He handed the device back to her. I will stay, he said, not because you asked, not because it is the right thing to do, but because I think somehow I have been waiting for this moment my whole life, and I do not want to miss it. His markings blazed with joy, brighter than he had ever seen them. She stepped forward and embraced him, her warmth surrounding him like sunlight. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for choosing me again. Closed his eyes and let himself be held by a being from another world, and for the first time in 32 years, he felt complete. The years that followed were good ones. Became known throughout the galaxy as the human ambassador, though he never held any official title. He simply traveled with, met beings from 100 worlds and showed them, by his example, what humanity could be at its best. He helped heal a dozen diplomatic crises, not through clever words but through simple kindness. He treated sick children on distant planets, using skills learned in a small village clinic. He listened to ancient beings who had never spoken to a human before, and he taught them that sometimes the smallest people can have the largest hearts. He lived longer than any human had a right to, thanks to medicine and a bond that seemed to strengthen both of them. He celebrated his 80th birthday on a world made entirely of crystal. He celebrated his 90th on a ship traveling between galaxies. On the day he died, at 93 years old, held his hand. Her markings had never burned brighter, even as tears fell from her golden eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Smiled at her one last time. "I never was very good at following orders," he said, "but loving you, that was the easiest thing I ever did." He closed his eyes and let go. Lived for another 400 years after that. She became the longest-serving High Arbiter in galactic history. She prevented a dozen wars and healed wounds between species that had been enemies for. And for all those centuries, she carried his mark on her heart, a spiral of light that never faded, a reminder of a human who had walked into a blizzard because someone needed help. When she finally died, at an age so great that even her own people had lost count, her last words were his name. And somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, two souls who had been bound across worlds finally found each other again. The bond eternal, forever and beyond.